Alrighty, well, thank you guys for your prayers. As we've learned this weekend, I don't think you can pray too much, and I'd like a little extra prayer so that I can give you guys the best talk that I can. So I'm going to start us off in the name of prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit, living in me. Lord, thank you for this beautiful weekend that you've given all of us. We thank you for the fruits and graces, and pray that they would stay on our hearts, not just for this weekend, but for years to come, until eternity. Lord, we ask for the strength to weather the highs and lows of this life. We pray that we would know your love for us and trust you, whether we can feel it or not. Strengthen us as we go out and take the love that you've given us from this weekend and share that with all that we encounter in the world. All these things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Alrighty, well, here it is, guys. Sunday of Awakening. Best day of the semester. I'm convinced. And I hope that you guys all have had a fantastic weekend. But even if you haven't, I want to tell you that that's okay. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But if you reflect on the fruits and graces, blessings, love that you've received this weekend, also know that if you go out into the world today and tomorrow as the same person who arrived here on Friday, this whole beautiful weekend could be in vain. If you go back onto campus on Monday and you think, talk, pray, do the same as you did on Friday, then this weekend could be just another weekend. But that's not what God has in store for you. It's also not an accident that you're here this weekend. God brought you here on this weekend so that you could start making real changes in your daily life so that you could grow closer to Him. To emphasize that nothing is an accident, I want to tell you guys a quick funny story that happened to me that really showed me this. I was walking to Mass on Friday. I live at the apartment just north of St. Mary's, so I was walking along the street, and that sidewalk hadn't been open again yet. The construction was still going on. It's the construction. But God is making all things new, and it's going to be beautiful. So I was walking a little bit in the middle of the road, and I'm just reading the daily readings, trying to get ready for Mass while I'm walking, and out of nowhere, I get swept off my feet, thrusted forward about 15 feet, and I turn around, and I had just gotten hit by a car.
Oh my gosh.
And I was fine, but long story short, the guy runs out of his car, and he's really sorry, and he offers to buy me a meal. As a college student, like you guys, I know when to turn down a free meal. So I obliged. This guy's name is Mariano. And it was very evident to me from the very moment that I got to this lunch with him that this was no accident. He actually was a fallen away Catholic, and he had this really interesting spirituality that he described to me. The gist of it was that he didn't really believe in a God, a Father who knows and loves us. He believed in this kind of abstract energy of love that the whole world kind of gravitates around, and kind of like an electron does around a nucleus. No rhyme, not much rhyme or reason to it, just kind of this abstract gravitation around this energy. And he didn't really believe that he was where he was for a reason. And so I asked him, Mariano, if that's true, then how would you explain our encounter? I was walking to Catholic Mass. You used to be Catholic. You hit me with your car. And now here we are becoming friends over a meal. How does that happen if this is just some coincidence? And he looked at me and he said, you know, Austin, sometimes it just is too thought out to be a coincidence. And I want to extend that to you guys. The fact that you're here is no coincidence. It's too thought out. It's too intentional from a loving Father that you're here this weekend. So the name of my talk is RNC. What is that? What does that stand for? Well, the R stands for resolution, and the C stands for commitment. So how I'm going to define resolution for today is it's basically a goal. And commitment is going to be what it's going to take to achieve that goal. So speaking of resolutions, raise your hand if you have ever set a New Year's resolution. Now, keep your hand raised if you made it through January. Yeah, I can't say that. What about through the end of the year? Oh, got a couple. That's pretty good. But keep your hand raised if you're still doing that same thing today. Awesome. Good for you guys. Unfortunately, that's not all of us. And I think we're going to talk about why today. And I think the reason is that we don't set good goals. And here's what I mean. So to set a good goal, you have to set a SMART goal. That's an acronym that stands for something that's going to help us remember how to set good goals, good resolutions, so that we can make changes in our daily life and get closer to God. The S of SMART stands for specific. You can't have a vague goal or resolution. If you made the resolution at New Year's that you want to start working out more, I mean, that's great, but it's not very specific. And that might be one of the reasons why it didn't continue for very long. It also has to be M, measurable. Instead of saying, I want to lose some weight, you would say, I want to lose 10 pounds. Or I want to pray for 20 minutes a day. Instead of, I just want to start praying more. The A in SMART is achievable. Your goal should be achievable. It should be realistic. Otherwise, why even set the goal? But it should also push you. Again, if it doesn't push you, why are you even setting this goal? If it doesn't stretch you, what's the point? So it needs to be something that's realistic, that you can attain, but it should also be something that stretches your limits. Now, if where you're at right now is that you need to start by, I'm going to pray 5 minutes every day. That's great. If that's a realistic goal for you, and that's going to push you, then that's a great place to start, and I encourage you to do that. The R in SMART is relevant. It should be relevant to your purpose. In our talk today, we're going to be talking about a goal or resolution that's relevant to getting closer to God, to getting to heaven. If your resolution doesn't help you do that, then there's no point of even setting it. The T in SMART stands for time specific. There should be some kind of order that has to do with time that will help you keep on track for your goal. You could give yourself a deadline. You could say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds before Thanksgiving. You could say, I'm going to try this form of prayer every day for a month. And then after that month, you could take a step back and see, did this work? Do I need to add some things, take some things away? But you're giving yourself that month so that you can do it for that entire month. Sometimes I think what we do with our SMART, or what we do with our not so SMART resolutions is we just say, oh, I'm going to start doing this. And you don't give yourself any time to any kind of time that you're going to do that for. And then it gets lost, and then you stop doing it, like we've seen with people that keep our hands raised, like me. I want to give you guys one or two quick examples of what that kind of goal might be. My uncle, every morning when he runs on the treadmill, he prays a rosary. He puts his earbuds in, and he prays a scriptural rosary every day on the treadmill. He doesn't get off that treadmill until he's prayed that rosary. That's another example of a time-specific goal. When you say you're going to do something, every time blank. Every time I brush my teeth, I'm going to say a Hail Mary. Before I go to bed every night, I'm going to read the Bible for 5 minutes. Every morning when I wake up, I'm going to hop on the treadmill and pray a rosary. Who's seen, maybe in commercials or movies, the guy on a golf course who is driving around picking up the balls, and everyone on the driving range is trying to hit him? Have you seen that? That was me sophomore year. I was that guy. So, and you have to do something while you're driving that cart, because it's just a really mundane task of just picking up the golf balls. That's all you're doing. A lot of people would listen to music or would listen to a podcast or something. I took it upon myself that every time that I would drive the picker, I would listen to a Scott Hahn talk or some kind of other theological talk to grow my knowledge about our faith. So again, that's a SMART resolution: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-specific. So that's the resolution part. But where does commitment come into all this? What is it going to take for us to hold fast to our commitments and achieve them? Well, it's going to take accountability. It's going to take the MBOK. We saw in our first reading today that Aaron and Hur had to help Moses lift up his arms when they got tired. Similarly, we should use our community, use our MBOK. Find people you know, love, and trust to help support you, lift you up, and hold you accountable to your goals. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." Another thing we have to do is we have to show up, both mentally and physically. Imagine if you went on a date, and you were there, but the whole time you were just texting on your phone. You're probably not going to get very much out of that date. You're not really going to grow any closer to that person. You were there physically, but you weren't really there mentally. Similarly, when we go to Mass, go to prayer, we should prepare ourselves beforehand and enter into that time with Jesus by showing up both physically and mentally. Another thing we need is consistency. Being a Christian is not a when I feel like it kind of thing. You can't just do it sporadically. It's got to be an everyday decision. If you only are going to pray when you feel like it or when you have some extra time, it's probably not going to happen. At least not very often. At least not consistently enough to transform your life. Sanctification is a process. It's not a one-time event. This retreat was amazing. At least I hope so. But it was just 3 days. What are you going to do from here on out every day to say yes to the Lord? Now, to get back to if this weekend wasn't so great for you, or just really talking to anyone who's ever had a rough day, or ever had a hard time in prayer, or ever had trouble feeling the existence of God, I want to tell a quick story. My youth pastor in high school, he was a very charismatic, very spiritual man. He loved praise and worship so much. It was just an amazing way for him to pray. He led our band in such a way that it looked like he was on fire every single time he was praying praise and worship. And at that time in my life, that was my favorite way to pray. And mainly because of the kinds of feelings that I got when I had a good praise and worship session. And I told him that, thinking he'd be all on board. But he just kind of looked at me and said, "That's great, Austin, but it's not always going to feel that way." And at the time, I was really troubled, really upset, because I thought to myself, if I can't feel God's existence in an intimate time like praise and worship or prayer, then does he even exist? But I think that was some of the most helpful advice I've ever heard. Because when it did get hard, or when I did go to prayer and didn't feel any special feelings, didn't feel the presence of God, I knew that it was actually an invitation for me to trust him more. We walk by faith, not by sight. Father Mike Schmitz once said, "Do you worship the feeling God gives you, or do you worship God?" Our second reading today also said, we must be persistent, whether it is convenient or inconvenient. It's not always going to be convenient to get up and pray. It's not always going to be convenient to take time away from studying or whatever else you want to do and make time for Jesus. But it's what we have to do if we want to be transformed. I want to know something, Ags. Us Aggies love our Texas A&M football, don't we? But I want to know how we can tailgate all day for a game, stand for an entire 4-hour football game. How can us Aggies have that type of commitment, and then we go to Mass on Sunday and some people didn't make it? Or we'll stay up till late night hours in the night studying for an exam for the next day, but we won't make time to read the Bible at the end. We won't make any time for Jesus. How is it that we're so committed to certain things in our life, but we don't show that same commitment to the most important thing in our life, to the only thing that is life? Now, I know this can kind of seem overwhelming. You're saying I have to do this kind of stuff every single day? Are you crazy? But I want to encourage you guys that saints aren't just the people that are perfect. Around the year 1900, there was a saint. His name was Saint Mark Zhong. I had to ask my coworker that speaks Mandarin how to say that. Still working on it. But I'm gonna call him Saint Mark for the rest of this talk. So. But he actually died an opium addict and is now a canonized saint in the Catholic Church. Not he used to be an opium addict. He died an opium addict. He was an opium addict till the day of his death, and he is a saint. How did that happen? Around that time, they didn't really understand the meaning of addiction as a disease like we do now. So, and St. Mark was a very devoted Catholic. He would frequent confession, and of course, as an addict, he was confessing the same sin every time. Father, forgive me for I've sinned. I've taken opium again. And he comes back over and over. And eventually the priest, not knowing about how addictive, that addiction is a disease, not knowing that, he thought that St. Mark wasn't sorry for his sins, which is an important part of a valid confession. So he told him, go and come back when you're ready to make a good confession, when you've given up opium. And of course he couldn't because he was addicted. And so, but he would go back to Mass every single Sunday. And feeling as though he was in a state of mortal sin, he never received the Eucharist. But he came back to Mass every single Sunday. Feeling a wretched wreck, feeling that he was hopeless, he prayed to God constantly and said, Lord, make me a martyr, for it's the only way I can get to heaven. And St. Mark got his chance. During the Boxer Rebellion in China, Christians across China were persecuted. And St. Mark's family also was. They refused to renounce their faith, even with threats of death. And St. Mark asked that he would be killed last, so that no one in his family would have to die alone. So St. Mark's prayer was answered. He became a martyr, and now someone who died an opium addict is canonized by the Catholic Church as a saint. And you can be too. It was his faithfulness and commitment to the Lord that made him a saint. It was his consistency in prayer to continue to ask to make him holy that made him a saint. It was that trust that no matter how broken and dirty St. Mark was, that God had the power, the desire to make him holy, and that he would do so. So in conclusion, I want to ask you guys, why was this weekend different? We know that God is never changing. We know his love for us stays the same. So why was this weekend different? I would propose that it's because you made time for him this weekend. You made time to listen to him, to receive his love. Offer God whatever you can, whatever time you have, and he will multiply it. God is never outdone in generosity. He will take what you give him and multiply it like he did when he made 5 loaves and 2 fish, feed thousands. The last thing I want to leave you guys with is an excerpt of a letter written by an African Christian martyr about 100 years ago. This was the last thing he wrote before he died and became a Christian martyr. I am part of the fellowship of the unashamed. I have Holy Spirit power. The die has been cast. I have stepped over the line. The decision has been made. I am a disciple of his. I won't look back, let up, slow down, back away, or be still. My past is redeemed. My present makes sense. My future is secure. My pace is set. My gait is fast. My goal is heaven. My road is narrow. My way rough. My companions few. My guide is reliable, and my mission is clear. I am a disciple of Jesus. I must go till he comes, give till I drop, preach till all know, and work till he stops me. And when he comes for his own, he'll have no problem recognizing me. My banner will be clear. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Awesome. Thank you, Austin, for that awesome talk. You guys can give it up for us.